Okay, am I all set on the Zoom? All right, what's up, guys? So tonight's just going to be more of a led discussion, and we're going to help each of you. We only have a few teams here, sort of form your pitches into a formula that has worked tried and true throughout the 5 years of the challenge. So I thought we could just do a little bit of like a go around, like see what teams are here. So if you're on a team, could you raise your hand? Nice. So do you guys, would you introduce yourselves and like just give a quick status on like how your team's doing so far?
I'm Matthew. I'm John. Oh, I'm gonna do it. Okay. We're working on wildfire modeling, using drones and parametric modeling. Right now we are. I need to open our data set. Yeah.
Awesome. Oh yeah. Do you feel like you're gonna be ready for the video?
Yeah, we should be good.
Awesome. You guys want to go next?
Yeah, with Tutor AI, we're creating creating a model that corrects mistakes from the tutor's work. And I think the prototype is like 95% done. Now we're working on the video of the documentation.
Awesome.
Hi, I'm Tony, and my team and project essentially we're trying to have a connection between mental health and martial arts. Basically, have a physical component, we have a mental health component. We're trying to integrate it in, and essentially trying to see like how we can basically gamify it and essentially get you essentially on. And where we're at right now is essentially just trying to get all the work done as much as we can for the prototype in terms of like get some kind of counter working, figure out the video, and then pretty much all the documentation that we break.
That's why. All right, and Ryan?
You just said.
You're right.
Oh, okay. For Career UP, basically, our project is to. Can you guys help me out with this?
They're all, yeah, you guys are also a community too.
That basically uses your user information and data from job scraping or from job websites to basically generate or recommend, there we go, recommend jobs that would be best like tailored to your interests, as well as what give you a career path and what to do next to get that job.
Yeah, it's going well.
Yeah, I think so.
We should be set for a prototype phase, and then we're working on the video now.
Nice. All right, cool. Yeah, I just wanted to get a feel of the room because we're going to be doing some pitch drafting. Yeah, so that was the team progress checking. Okay, so the requirements for the video are not very specific on the website. So it can be no longer than 5 minutes. You must explain the intent, goals, and potential impact of the solution, demonstrate basic working functionality of the prototype, and be available through a YouTube channel. So that's not too specific, but that's why we're here. So we can get more specific and help you guys build it. Okay, so this is a poll for the room. What do you guys think is the most important aspect of the pitch? Ron?
Understanding your audience, in my opinion.
That's a good one. Amani?
Presentation skills, like it doesn't, a lot of times your content doesn't matter as much how you put your content towards your audience. It has to be attractive. Yeah, interesting.
Mm.
The hook, maybe, because that like helps you understand the overall feel, the overall video.
Yeah, and the hook is important because like these people are very high. Some of them are very high up in companies. They get bored so fast. Ryan, you say something?
Just how you convey the impact of your project.
Yeah, these are all really good answers. But the thing that we're going to discuss today is that you have to tell a compelling story. Why? I'll just give you the answer. They're memorable, easy to follow, and relatable, right? These people, they're very high up in companies, they're distracted easily. You want to keep them entertained, and you also want to have a logical progression of your story. And so one of the first discussions, I want you guys to think about one of your favorite TV shows or movies, books, whatever, and just think about how they impacted you and why they were actually memorable for you. Does anyone have like an example? If anyone's like really into like, I don't know, Marvel movies?
Mostly I can't think of a particular example right now, but the book or like the opening scene, the movie begins the second you read the first line, okay, you can't sound once upon a time. It has to be something that like stands out like, ooh, I want to know more. So you need something that keeps the audience like interested and intrigued enough to be like, oh, I want to know more what they're talking about. So a hook is very important. The first thing that you say or the first thing that you present is imperative and the most integral thing to your presentation.
What's like a movie recently that you guys saw that was like, that really like made you think?
The Batman trilogy.
The Batman trilogy? So what, all right, what about The Dark Knight was so memorable?
10 out of 10 film. It's like the entire trilogy is the epitome of greatness. You can't get better, you can't top it.
I actually agree. Yeah.
I just rewatched them too, they're insane. What I think is so inspiring about them is that generally superhero movies are very like, if you're a superhero, it's all good, and it's like good versus bad, and there's no nuance, and with this movie, it's kind of dark. So even though he's supposed to be a superhero, he has a lot of flaws. So it's kind of like, to bring it back to the challenge, it's the fact that it's unexpected.
Yes. Yeah, these are all great examples. And so a great project pitch is the same as a great story. It should have the same structure as a story with a compelling hook, a middle that keeps the action going, and an ending that makes them surprised and relieves the pressure that you set at the beginning. So you have a compelling beginning, middle, and end, and captivating themes throughout, maybe some callbacks at the end to earlier things you said at the beginning, and key takeaways. That is huge. So I did a little bit of research, and there are 7 main ways to tell a story. So my source, the guy on LinkedIn, had storyteller in his headline, so trust me. But okay, so these are the 7 types. The one that we actually care about is just the pitch. Okay, this is a perfect outline of what every single challenge prototype pitch should be. So first, you have the wind up, which is basically saying what is happening in the world right now in this subject area, right? Catch them up and make sure everyone's on the same page. Then you have the hurdle. So once they understand what's going on, you have this big problem. And you see, it kind of goes like this, where you make it really sell the problem and why it's really important at the beginning. And then that's when you sort of introduce your vision. And so in the example, I'll explain that a little bit more, but if you're just kind of saying your vision, basically, like how you see it could potentially be solved. And then this part is really important, the options. The options is just basically your solution, but we recommend right before you present your solution, talk a little bit about how this problem is addressed today, and then really sell why your solution is way better than anything else going on today. Then the close, sort of similar to that, but really hammer home that your solution is the best and why. And then the fine print, that's when you get a chance to talk a little bit about your team, how they went about building it, and especially where your team is going with the project and how you're going to do that. And then the hook. So there's a hook at the beginning, the hook at the end, arguably is even more important. This is your finishing statement that really sells another benefit to your product, or it sells your tagline and what you're really about. You have to make the last sentence really strong. Okay, so this is actually my pitch video from sophomore year. I thought we could just tear it apart. It does have a lot of these aspects, but it also could use improvement according to our structure. So let's get into it. Wait, sorry guys, the audio is going through my computer. Okay, that should do it.
It is no secret that recycling.
It's still not playing through. Can you guys hear that though?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we can.
It is no secret that recycling is good for the environment. But what most people don't understand is how putting items in the incorrect recycling bin greatly reduces the effectiveness of recycling.
Just finish this ice around sugar, shaking his He is a good citizen and tries his best to recycle. When he approaches the recycling bin, he looks at the bin label plastic cups and thinks, yes, that's the right one, and throws the cup into that bin. Even though Pat thinks he did the right thing, he is unaware that he just caused contamination in the plastic bottle bin. Okay, so what do you guys think that first part was?
It was good because, as you said, relatable, the people have been in that situation. And you made points which you like immediately answer them. So for example, you mentioned contamination, but you left it as kind of like a cliffhanger. So it means the person wants to stay there hooked on, as Molly said. And that way it keeps them into the video and keeps them watching.
You had something that was essentially that was unexpected, being that like everybody knows that like, yeah, you should recycle, but then showed like, yeah, there's still a problem.
Exactly, same point, like the hope, whoever started with, oh, it is no secret that we're recycling is good thing, I'm like, she's saying the obvious while also making sure that, okay, you don't need to go deep into the topic because, well, it's obvious, and then giving the solution, especially the part where they said, oh, this is Pat, and well, you actually doing it, it's like dumbed down and very simple, and like, kept me engaged with, oh, I wanna see what can happen.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to like make it a little bit silly, like we threw like a little bit of jokes and
Yes.
try to make
Your
it.
acting was definitely
But
top tier.
this is one of the things I actually did well, was like, at the very beginning, it's very clear what's going on. I didn't start throwing stats at you as to why recycling is bad, just get everyone on the same page. Okay, so now we're jumping into the hurdle.
Recycling contamination occurs when an item is placed in a bin. In this case, Pat accidentally contaminated the plastics bottles bin by inserting a cup that should have been placed in the miscellaneous plastics bin. Contamination creates the need to manually sort the recycled materials, which can come at a high price. At Penn State, waste collection fees per ton of source sorted recyclables is $20 versus $70 for landfill garbage. Factor in contamination, it gets much more expensive. At 3% contamination, the fee is $100 per ton, and at 20% or higher, the fee rises to $250 per ton. Of all the materials placed in recycling bins, about 40% were discarded in landfills due to their contamination. If recyclables are sorted correctly at the source, they have more value, thus driving up demand and simultaneously saving our planet.
Okay, so what do we think about that section? What is it called again? The hurdle. Let's go. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty, this one was pretty self-explanatory. We introduced some statistics and showed exactly why this is a problem. And so this is when you come in, once you level the playing field, everyone's on the same page, you say, bam, this is a huge problem, and here are some stats that you want. And who it's impacting to. For us, it's just kind of like the planet, so we didn't really go into that. But if you have like specific people that are really hurt by this problem, tell a story from their perspective in this sort of stage on the hurdle.
That's where AIPR eliminates contamination by sorting materials using machine learning as a source. We see the future of recycling as an automated process that requires no more effort than simply throwing garbage away. Our products are designed to eliminate the possibility of contamination, and thus making recycling significantly more efficient and economical. We are building a mobile app that helps users recycle, a machine learning model that classifies recyclables, and a recycling bot trash can that clears waste as it is thrown away.
Okay, so that was the vision. Do you guys think we did a good job of displaying the vision?
Could have been better.
Right? It was one static image the whole time. We should have had a face or some visuals like. Yeah, anyone else? I mean, roast me, please.
That was terrible.
I mean, it was also kind of confusing that you had these like 3 separate parts that you mashed together. Like it would have been nice if there was some flow.
Yeah, but it's just like, bam, here's this, and this, and it's like, they probably got confused about that part. And if you guys don't know the project, then you're probably confused as well. So yeah, in the vision, don't be afraid to show your face. You know, you can get a nice recording room for free in the library, which is really easy. All you do is press the button, the camera starts recording, and it's press the studio. You can get there 1.5 live, so. But, yeah, let's go to the next section.
Our first product is a mobile app that hosts a community of smart cyclists. Open the app to your home feed where you can view your and your friend's match recycle rate. On the top right, tap the camera button to start scanning. This opens up your camera so that our algorithm can start classifying, right?
Also, I'll just note, did anyone notice what we missed in terms of our pitch structure? So we jumped right into our product. What did we miss?
First solution.
Yeah, like we didn't even mention like, oh, this is how the problem is current.
Top three most likely items will appear in the bullet link at the bottom. If I tap them in a row, we set the Center County recycling plan. And if I tap on the box here, I'm going to their webpage dedicated to recycling batteries. On the profile page, you can see your total items recycled, as well as your progress towards a reward. In order to solve our classification problem, we have constructed a convolutional neural network model. In essence, we begin by sending an image through our model, which then uses various combinations of convolutional or sample operations to predict a category of recyclables. For example, metal, glass, or plastic. Given labels that note the correct classification of each image, our model will self-adjust its parameters to minimize loss and make a better class prediction over thousands of iterations of images.
Okay, you're reviewer, what did you think of that? So I guess we jumped right into the fine print. You get in the mind of a reviewer, you just saw this and you're evaluating the scene. You're like, do you care about that scene?
So like, what I'm getting out of it's like, so it either sorts it out into metal, glass, or plastic, right? Like only those three categories, or is there like like more in depth, like in plastic or?
Yeah, that's a good point. We should have mentioned that this is the current status of the product. But then we move on to more.
Okay,
Yeah, but yeah, at the time, it was just those three.
okay,
But then, yeah, in our, like, we were planning to move on to more, and we should have mentioned that.
yeah, all right.
I don't know how useful it was also to like just describe the model and like, you know, trying to minimize loss and all that stuff. Like, I don't think that was that important for a judge that isn't technical.
Yeah, that was 3-4 sentences that could turn into 1, maybe 2. I completely agree.
And then kick them over to the documentation for the rest. For more details on our technical approach, please see the technical section of the documentation.
Yeah, and deliver those details.
Yeah, to build off of what Brad said, like it really is helpful to, like as an outside viewer, that isn't really all that interesting, like cool, that's the approach that you're using. But the second you say like, this is our approach, we're using convolutional neural networks. And if you'd like to learn more, if they're interested, they'll take the effort to like go in the description of your video and read your documentation if you have a website or anything like that. But it takes up like probably what, 10-15 seconds of your 5-minute pitch that really didn't have to be that long.
Yeah.
So should there be any technical explanation in the video, or should it just be entirely excluded and read in the document?
Be brief and be direct. So like, we could have just said, this is a neural network and it outputs these three different types of recycled items. And we trained it with our data. Like, you don't have to go into like, oh, we did a soft max in the last layer to get the maximum probability. Like, they don't care about that.
This is also the part where you might reference scalability of the model. So if we're talking about AIPR here specifically, this would have been a perfect time for them to say, and to scale this model up to work for additional materials. It will, you know, be relatively simple. It'll be, you know, identification of a data set, whatever the case it may be. But one of your review criteria is scalability of solution. And that's not just in how many people will use it. That's also, can you make it work for all the use cases you need to make it work for? And this would be one of the places where you'd address the technical side of that.
One other thing I forgot to note was when we did the app demo, we made it a point to like make it very obvious how to use it. And so like, I would recommend when you're actually showing, if you have an app interface or website interface, don't go through like explaining each part of it, just only explain how to use it, if that makes sense. Because some teams are like, this is our login page, and we have Firebase authentication that runs through a secure server, and it's like, just tell me how to use it and why it's important. That's what the reviewer is thinking.
In terms of data, we have put together a Python script to scrape Google images using search queries specific to the guidelines provided by the Penn State Sustainability Institute. As of now, we have constructed a labeled dataset with over 2,400 images that will be used to train our classification model. Another aspect of AIPR is having a tangible product capable of being implemented in the Penn State Recycling Initiative. This is the form of a robot that takes in recycled waste and automatically sorts them in the right bin using our vision model. To achieve this, we created a full 3D CAD model in SolidWorks, which serves not only as a parts list, but also as our design reference for the robot to be based on after the prototype stage. Ultimately, we are planning to jumpstart our app and implement recycling bots on Penn State's campus in an effort to reduce the campus's overall contamination percentage below 20%. For an institution that creates about 20,000 tons of recyclables each year, this could save upwards of $2.5 million every single year. Be sure to read our documentation, find out more about our work.
Okay, yeah,
You had me at $2.5 million.
yes.
As well as every leader at Penn State that was watching that video.
And we got the results. But like, that is what I'm saying, that is the power of the hook. It's like, if you leave them at the very end with something that really speaks to them, as Rohan said, they're like, think about audience, what they care about. You're gonna probably move on to the next round. Yeah, any other questions or critiques about that before we move on to the next thing? No? I guess we did a decent job of it, but make sure that they know exactly what you're working on before the MVP. That is something they take into account a lot. That they want to see your project more as a business continue to grow rather than a project that you just finished and now you're showing it. So you have to make sure that they know. And you have to make sure the steps make sense. That's the next step for your project. Okay, so now it's your turn. So can I get a volunteer from one of the teams in here? Don't be shy. All right, Tony, let's go. Okay, so basically what we're gonna do is we're gonna run through each one of those steps. And I'm just gonna ask you to formulate and pitch the group what that step is. So just a quick review. These are the steps. You have the wind up, the hurdle, the vision, the options, the close, the fine print, and then the glorious hook. Got it? Okay. Okay, so wait, could you just give everyone like a recap, like a 60-second overview of your project?
Correct. So, second overview, essentially, we're trying to connect mental health with something physical, and that physical aspect being martial arts. And the whole point is that necessarily what you do, it's how you say something when you're actually learning the physical material that then actually facilitates that mental health growth as you continue to progress within the app that we're making.
Awesome. Okay, so like, what would be a way to make sure everyone's on the same page at the beginning? The wind up.
Everyone's on the same page. With the easiest way to kind of say is that usually the big attitude towards physical fitness is no matter if you do it or do not do it, you usually feel like that it is good. Same thing with a lot of playing when you're playing games. Most people think that playing games is a lot of fun, it's a lot enjoyable. You can do it with your friends and all those other aspects. The other thing as well with mental health, a lot of people have either said that they have not gone through therapy just because they don't need to really do it, or B, they just are kind of uncertain just because you don't get that instantaneous feedback, because we do have CAPS, we do have those resources, but the bottom line is that everybody knows that mental health therapy will help you for mental health. The big problem that we're essentially facing right now is why don't people go and do it? And that's essentially what we're trying to really figure out. And basically some of the reasons that we found before was essentially people are saying there's some kind of stigma. That stigma kind of around mental health, it can be deteriorating a little bit right now. but there is still that little bit of uncertainty just because that impact is right now, you're seeing only short term. Everybody really loves that instantaneous results, really like to see that instant feedback. Mental health is something that's not instantaneous. It's something to really put a lot of cognitive effort to put into it.
Wait,
And
good point. So you talked a lot about the problem, but the wind up, basically, it seems to me that like what's happening today is that people are usually trying to approach the mental health problems with drugs or therapy, drugs as in prescription drugs, drugs and therapy and stuff like that. And then you're sort of introducing this new method to go about it.
So I think for us is the biggest problem is that most people, I think either they have, of course, like the solution they have, and the other most of the time is that they actually don't have a solution. They do nothing. And that's essentially like what our biggest like aspect is we're trying to really target.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, you kind of did the hurdle, right? Okay, so what's a sentence or two vision of what Cobra AI wants to do?
Cobra AI wants to do in a sentence or less is basically we're going to create again. I'm not good at that, but is to create a game at which you are engaged in trying to learn martial arts and at the same time learning about good mental wellness.
That you should say that in your video. I think that's good. The options. So how do people usually go about solving their mental health problems?
So the current solution is, of course, you have mental health apps. However, the biggest basis is that there's probably tons already out there. A lot of breathing exercises, a lot of breathing this one, but at the same time, there's also, of course, people can, of course, still go to therapy, still kind of go to CAPS here, especially at Penn State. The thing, and I also want to talk about why it's not working, is basically the whole point of why it's not working is because if you have ever downloaded a breathing app, is that it usually focuses on a lot of surface level issues and more or less it's kind of does a statement, breathing makes you calm. Well, that's an obvious fact. But the problem is that everyone individually is suffering from a different issue. And so breathing equals calm is a fact, but it may not really be particularly applicable to the person. And so most people already fall off those apps. Now, of course, you also tend to have fitness apps that also target. Of course, you have Apple Fitness, you have a bunch of like other games where you can play in the Oculus, which does that. But why that kind of doesn't really work out for us is because those fitness apps, most people completely don't really use the trackers unless they use some kind of cardio, unless of course they're like specifically really die hard in the gym, or they're really more looking for just finding some kind of workout video just so they can integrate it in their own routine and don't really use that fitness app really whatsoever.
Wait, Tony. So now, why is Cobra AI the better solution?
Well, the Cobra AI reason why it's a better solution is because we're trying to integrate the fun aspect people have of physical fitness and as well as people have in terms of playing a game, and essentially trying to integrate it together within a mental health and a fitness aspect to the point where you're not necessarily you're not going into it just because something adds to your video. You're basically, while you're learning how to actually do it, you're playing through the app. You're trying to get into the competitive side of, okay, instead of thinking about here's my problems that I have, I'm going to think about how can I make my score better? How can I increase my competitiveness on this app to essentially keep on working on that mental health and essentially come back towards it, essentially helping you get that long-term impact because you're coming back towards the app to play something that you enjoy.
Nice. You honestly just did the close as well with that. But so what's some of the fine print? So how are you guys building this app?
So the way we're building this app, essentially we're having a classification model, where essentially we're trying to use, I believe, I forget the exact program, but essentially what it's doing, I think it's like the I believe it's open source, but basically the fine print is basically, we're trying to make essentially a model that creates a lot of like vectors that basically identifies your key joints. You basically kind of move on and essentially sees the angles between your joints, and from there can classify if you've done a punch or not, and basically sets up a kind of counter. And of course, if you do a different punch, it'll be a different counter.
And then those punches are all integrated into the game-like system.
In the game-like system to essentially tell you, you got it wrong, got it right. And then the whole point is that as you're then playing the game, we can talk a little bit more in the documentation, how essentially it will be related to then basically the feedback that you're getting and to again help the enjoyment of what you're doing.
Okay. And now the hook. So it's kind of hard to come up with one on the spot, but like if you were to say one sentence tagline to the reviewers, what would you say?
We're not solving mental health. That's the thing. Meaning that it is not us that solve it, it is that you that solve it by playing our app. Wow.
All right, Terry, thank you so much. You did a great job. All right. Does anyone else want to go?
I want to point out one thing on Cobra AI. One of the things that teams with solutions like you're doing struggle with a little bit is in the story and making it relatable. One of the things Pat said is you've got to allow your reviewers to make a connection with you and with the story and understand it and feel themselves in the same place. Many of the movies that we love, going back to the early example, we love because it resonates with us for one reason or another. An underdog or, or overcoming adversity, whatever the case may be. But for your story, it's tough because it's a lot of abstracts. It's a lot of, well, some people suffer with this and some people don't do well with current apps. One of the ways that you can bring that down home, and although it's not my favorite way of doing it, it's effective in this case, is creating a user story around someone. You've often seen, if you ever watch Shark Tank, you've seen this is Sarah. Sarah is an 8-year-old girl who is struggling with mental health issues and has tried 15 different fitness apps and has failed at every one. Doing something along those lines. If you can get a real person to do that, that's even better. But at the very least, coming up with that fictitious person to embody a lot of what you were just saying helps that individual who's reviewing to look at that person and go, I know somebody like Sarah. I get that. That works for me. I understand it. And it makes the rest of your argument easier to make.
You can even say that you kind of reverse things instead of just making like a fictitious person. If you have someone you've met,
Right.
like for schizophrenia AI, one of the presenters like relative had schizophrenia. So that's what they opened with in their pitch.
Yeah.
And that helped them and may have influenced them to be one of the winning teams at the end. So, and then for Nittany Ai Student, my team, our team leader, Edward, grew up in Kenya and like firsthand faced these issues, saw these issues like happening firsthand. So, if let's say you guys don't have like a personal connection or anything, but you're like meeting these clients and people who are using your app, you can just use them and connect with them and then use them for your pitch. So, that makes sense.
I agree wholeheartedly. Both Nittany Ai and Schizophrenia, I guarantee you the reviewers had decided that those teams were going to be funded before the video was over. Within the first minute of the video, they're like, oh, this is a good one.
Tony, you know a lot of people from those dojos back home, don't you? Yeah. Does anyone else have feedback for Convey AI to help out? I will move on to our next team. So, wait, Zach, did you say you wanted to come up?
Yeah, I don't know if it's like a time constraint, but I'll go.
All right, let's go. No, we're talking. You can stay there. That's fine. Okay, let's restart. So, can you just give a quick recap of Tutor AI to everyone?
Yeah, our goal is to increase accessibility and affordability to tutors through Tutor AI. So it'd be like a one-on-one tutor with someone.
Okay, so what's the one? Like, what's sort of the current status of tutoring and this sort of space?
And this is the relatability aspect, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking like we could open with someone like staring at a math problem with a bunch of work, like they don't know where to go. They're like really frustrated or something like that.
Yeah. Is there like a lack of tutoring?
Yeah, maybe they see like Chegg is, they got a paywall, auto math doesn't give any help or.
Chegg paywall.
Do you have any anecdotes of you struggling that you want to share?
I could, me struggling?
Or anyone, I mean, like, who or anyone you know who's.
The most recent one was. I'm not in any like hard classes this, or no, physics 212, I was throwing out a math problem last night, and I could not figure it out. I didn't know what to do, so I ended up going off, so I was like 2 days later. But there was that 1.5 day gap where I didn't know what to do, so. With Tutor AI, I would have figured it out.
The vision. Okay, so you sort of let the reviewers know, like, this is the current state of tutoring and what are some of the minor issues? What's the major hurdle?
I guess it would be access to a tutor, but maybe that could be specified to the money aspect of it. I don't know if limited tutors. Well, I guess it could be incorporated, right? a limited availability of tutors plus the monetary.
Yeah. Well, I know you did mention that one of the use cases was SAT tutoring, right?
Right. I think tutors cost like.
Yeah, and then I've seen some graphs of like family income versus SAT score, and it's pretty linear.
Yeah. Right, correlation.
All right, so what's Tutor AI's vision?
To be a accessible and affordable tutor to anyone whenever they need it.
Bang. Did you write that before?
I think so, yeah. Exactly like that, but I cheated.
Okay, so the options you sort of talked about tutoring before, but are there any other options that are similar to you?
I guess it would be Chegg and Photomath, and then obviously any off-brand Cheggs. But I guess the problem with those would be it just, if Chegg were to help you with learning, then it wouldn't be banned from every educational institute. So clearly it's not very beneficial.
Yeah.
So Tutor AI would be working with educational institutions instead of against them.
Yeah. All right, so now present Tutor AI as the better solution.
Sorry, I have a question actually, for these, like, for a project like this, I'm on this team and like, we use GPT, right? When we're talking about our competitors, do we also have to mention GPT and how we're kind of better than them for this?
Actually, I have a question about that. It's just like, okay, so if we use ChatGPT, right, like I can get an answer for it, but also I need to read it and then sum it up. So what's the difference of me using your app? Like you wouldn't give me a direct answer?
That's exactly what I was gonna say, like, should we address the fact that like, we're better than GPT for this, because GPT is tutoring now too.
100%. Because a judge might look at this and say, I use ChatGPT with my son yesterday.
Yeah.
For this exact thing. And you have to say, this is what ChatGPT can do, and this is how we make it way better. So yeah, actually, yeah. 100%.
Because I think all of us have experienced, anyone who's used ChatGPT, the prompt engineering is critical. Making certain that you've got that prompt dialed in exactly the way you need it to be is tough sometimes. And what you're doing is you're providing that layer on top that is making certain that that individual is getting to the direction and guidance that they need.
Thank you.
Yeah, but I agree with Pat wholeheartedly to mention them. You never want to give the reviewers an opportunity to ask a question that you have not already answered. You do not want them to end that video and go, well, they didn't talk about, or, but what about? No, try to head every single one of those off at the pass.
Yeah, ChatGPT is probably the biggest one.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And I think that goes for every team, whether you're using ChatGPT or not. These new tools, are these new tools a threat to your business model, to what you're planning on doing?
Okay, so how is your solution better than ChatGPT? Like, how do you go on top of it?
I think ChatGPT is notoriously bad at math. And if you ask it the wrong question, it's always going to get you the wrong answer. So I think our product, by identifying the mistake very concretely and preventing it in such a way that it allows ChatGPT to clearly explain where you messed up and where you should go next. And obviously packaging it all into one product, I think provides a lot of convenience. So, value for the user.
With like the paired with OCR.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so the fine print, how did you guys build this? And what did you use?
So we initially use a OCR math fix to convert the handwriting into text. And then we use an algorithm that took a very long time to develop to figure out where the mistake is in the work. And then from the results of finding the mistake, we asked ChatGPT using a specific prompts where, like, what exactly the mistake is between the two expressions and what the next step would be in continuing the project.
Yeah, that's huge for differentiating between you and ChatGPT, because you're actually doing it. You're not just prompting it and hoping it outputs the right answer. And then what's your hook?
Still a work in progress. Cole had what did Cole say? He said, ChatGPT is a personal tutor in the palm of your hands. Something like that.
A tutor app.
Yeah.
That soda is Coke, oh, Pepsi.
All right, does anyone have any input for tutor AI as well? I think that's pretty good structure, and yeah, differentiating between the ChatGPT is a good way to go.
One thing I'll just throw out is have a laser focus on individuals with real needs here. What you run the risk of doing is having the reviewers go, is this just for a bunch of lazy students or cheap students who don't want? If you focus it in on economically disadvantaged individuals who cannot afford, and what Pat was talking about with SATs, helping to balance that access to knowledge and training and tutoring, there you've got a really compelling argument. If it's just, oh, tutors are expensive, that doesn't resonate. So focus in, even though it will be broadly applicable to other groups, focus in on that group with highest need.
A question about what you just said, like I completely agree about what you said, but the aspect of like just for lazy students, I feel like a ton of the projects that have come out in the last few years come out of simple convenience. I mean, the calculator can be an example of use for lazy people. Like you can calculate stuff yourself. So isn't that still an approach, just the convenience of it?
It can be, except for this is a challenge focused on AI for good, for a net positive impact to the world. So, well, it might be a good business model. That does not necessarily mean that it aligns with the for good model. So that's where I'm saying, I'm not saying that the solution is any of those critiques that reviewers might come up with, but you have to focus in on where is the greatest value here based on the criteria that are at hand.
Thank you.
This is just something similar to just like, it's like convenient for whom? Because like, if you're like, for your calculator example, if you're pitching it to like, oh yeah, for businesses, like you want your employees to be efficient. So you give them a calculator to make sure they can do all their calculations. Well, it's still convenience, but not convenience to business leaders, which now for a good impact to lessen down.
Right.
Yeah, awesome. Any more suggestions? All right, do you guys want to go? You don't have to. Okay. Actually, this is perfect. There's about 10 minutes left. All right, so just some final tips. Write and refine a script. You would be surprised how many teams in the past have just rambled and used and it's just like you're watching a 5-minute video, like that's how you lose attention. So write a script and stick to it. Actually, one thing about that, if you write your script, write the script yourself. You can pass it through ChatGPT and tell it to rewrite it as if someone you really like said it, like Steve Jobs or Bill Gates or someone like that.
That's a great.
It's really cool. Be concise in explanation. You know, we went over that, especially when it comes to the technology. If you can explain it in 4 minutes, don't extend it 5 to fill time. So that's pretty self-explanatory. In fact, the insect dive team that won in 2021, their prototype video was 3.5 minutes long. But they just got their point across really fast, and went on to win. Use visuals, so images, diagrams, in-person interviews. Like I said, I recommend using the library resources, the media center. Pretty much professional video, like a video place. Yeah, as you saw in my video, just static images don't really go off very well. You can sort of get distracted. So really recommend that. Cite credible sources is huge. So I know a lot of people have interviewed professors. Make sure to mention their name when you say something that they said. Reputable journals, institutions, government agencies. You need to build your credibility in this. That's how you're going to be taken more seriously. And make it entertaining. You're telling a story, so tell a story how you see fit. You don't have to follow exactly the format, but just tell a story how you would tell it. So just a few things about the documentation. This is just the outline. So you have the problem statement and project overview, very similar to your proposal. But if you did any additional interviews or research, put it there. The use case. So the use case is basically saying who uses this, why do they use it, and how do they use it? And then also, you know, it's sort of to be implied how it solves their problem, right? You know, I'd recommend actually doing like a story, like Brad said, like Sally's an 8-year-old girl, she's this, you know, from this school, from this area, and she has this problem, and she uses the product. The development timeline, so, you know, you're supposed to actually set goals throughout the entire time period between March and September for MVP. And, you know, they want to see you're taking this seriously and that you're serious about this project. So really, really try to make that as good as you can. The technology section, that's, you know, your tech stack, your AI approach, that's pretty self-explanatory and pretty custom to every single project. Data sources, team capabilities, you know, if your team changed from the proposal, you just have to edit that. And then the user interface. So the user interface include images and descriptions, and be as clear as you can. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Brad, would you add anything to that?
No, I think this is really good. Actually, one thing just as an aside that I'll throw out there. I've talked to a couple teams about this, teams who are nervous about doing the voiceover. Just this past week, I don't know if any of you have used Tortoise TTS. It's a language tool for replicating voices. I installed it and trained it on my voice, and I did it as a voiceover. I took a PowerPoint that I have with all the notes, and I had me read the PowerPoint. Amazing, flawless, no ums, clear, articulate all the way through. It took me about an hour to do it. So if you've got an extra hour and you're looking for something different to do, it's a new tool that's out there that can allow you to create a really professional voiceover for your tool in your own voice. Yeah. Yeah, I'll put it in the yeah, it's Tortoise. It's named Tortoise because it's unbearably slow to train to build to build your model, but it's really, really good. It's not as good as 11 Labs, if any of you have ever used that, but it's pretty good.
Does it sound better than if you had just actually spoken for that video that you used it?
100%, because it is perfectly paced. There's no strange pause where all of a sudden I've got to go back and record it again for the 5th time. It was really cool. So anyway, just an idea. By no means you have to use that, but it's a tool, another tool.
But that would be better than, I guess, talking if you're saying the audio comes out.
If you're at all concerned about you being able to get through the whole thing and be articulate and clear and have it very audible for the reviewers, so easily heard and understood, then I would recommend that maybe doing something like this would be good. Some of you have perfect speaking voices and you'd be fine, not an issue. Some of you just aren't as comfortable with that. So, and pacing, you know, are you speaking too fast, too slow, whatever the case may be, this evens it out. Yeah.
Another question I was asking myself is, do we have access to more professional cameras than our phones or like mics at Penn State anywhere?
Yeah, that Pat has mentioned a couple times, and it's also on the website. There are things called at all the campuses. There are places called One Button Studios. You can reserve them on 25 Live. Is that where you get them, or the Media Commons?
Yeah.
Okay, somewhere online.
Yeah.
When you follow the links on the website, you'll see One Button Studios. You can reserve time. There are about a dozen of them around the UP campus at this point, and they are. You walk in with a jump drive. You drop it into a USB port, and it is professional audio, professional video. And when you're done, you pull your jump drive out and you've got your video done. Some of them have white or clear acrylic boards that you could write on from behind, and it flips it so it looks correct on the other side. Just really professional presentation materials.
Also, just saying about like the recording thing, I think like the emotion in a way like you communicate with the other person is also a very important factor of like in the presentation. So if you're actually able to do a good job in presentation, I don't recommend using that, I think.
And the only reason I recommended this tool is because it is not monotone and even. If in your training, when you say the sentences you use for training, if you talk like this, if you have inflection and emotion behind it, it does that. I mean, it absolutely blows me away. You should really play around with it. 11 labs for $1, you can create one using 11 labs. It's much easier to do. But anyway, it does that.
Can you tell, like, if you listen to our, can you tell it's AI?
None of you would be able to tell it's not me. My wife would not be fooled. But none of you would be able to tell the difference.
Yeah, I should.
What I feel like I can.
Maybe. Hey, I'll have to record some, or not record some. I'll have to play something and send it to you guys. Say which one's real. Yeah.
I have a question for Pat. I also have a very good. As a successful challenge participant, when it comes to your video, and then I guess Brad could chime in on this, but what like three mistakes that your team made that you can like in hindsight, you know, which you haven't made, like now you look back on it, you're like, I made those mistakes and I can improve on this.
In the prototype stage?
In the pitch or the general competition is what I guess you would say.
Yeah, so in our video, I wish we mentioned how as the model production, as the model goes into production. So for example, if we're having people take pictures of their garbage with our app, we're getting all of that data of garbage, right? And so that in the MVP phase, we were able to pitch that as saying, now we can get all of this data and train our models to be way more accurate. But we didn't do that in the prototype stage. And so like, I don't know how close we were to getting kicked out, but you know, considering that, I wish we went back to that. I wish we made the UI look a little bit better. So as you saw, it was like pretty basic. I'd try, if I could go back, I would say, this is functioning, but here's a mock design of what it will look like in the final product. And then make it look really pretty, just like on Figma or something. If I think of anything else, I'll let you know, but that's sort of what I can think of off the top of my head.
I don't know, Brad, if you have any ideas from what you've seen in the years that the time has been going on.
Yeah, the biggest mistake people make is they are either too dry or too technical. They don't tell a story. You know, we're all human beings. We've got long pedigree of sitting around campfires and telling each other stories. That has not changed. So if you can tell a story around what you're doing and convey emotion and have that reviewer relate to what you're doing, you will find success. If you give facts and figures and don't relate to the reviewers as human beings, then you'll struggle.
Speaking of being too dry and too technical, you just reminded me of, I found this video from my project I was on freshman with. Half of it is one of our members literally walking through and running cells in a Jupyter. It was terrible. I don't know why it's not loading, but okay, it's not loading.
Yeah, you had a question?
Yeah, I was gonna ask, so it'd be smarter to follow the path of like someone who's getting affected by the issue than saying like, hey, like, you know, wildfires happen like in X, Y, and Z amount of times every year, like, and pulling out like a statistic in the beginning of the video.
So it was the April video did a really good job of this. It started with this personal relatable thing.
Yeah.
It was something that I experience all the time in the hub. I'm sitting there with my tray. I'm like, I'm going to screw this up. I'm going to put this stuff in the wrong bin. I could immediately relate to what he was doing.
Yeah.
Then they moved to, and this is the impact of that behavior. This amount of contamination costs this amount of money, and you know, and start giving the quantitative measures from the qualitative story that it started with.
Yeah.
So doing that transition is important. I don't think one in isolation with from the other is good either.
Yeah.
But you have to start with the story.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I think I'll answer.
Because the stats don't make sense without the story, and the story doesn't have impact without stats.
Right.
Gotcha. Makes sense.
Yeah.
So in the video, should we be like when presenting our solution, should the visuals be the UI?
They should be part of the visuals. Yeah. You know, use additional graphs, like graphs showing like statistics that you're showing, or like I said, like videos of individuals, like in your case, with Tutor AI, like someone sitting down with a tutor and then sitting down and using Tutor AI. Like stuff like that.
Okay.
All right, to wrap up, I just have the criteria for review. So all of this is on nittanyai.psu.edu in the challenge section criteria, but it is very similar. It is very similar to the proposal criteria, but there's a few other things. So same impact as the first one, same feasibility, implementation and scaling is a new one. So basically, they're gonna look at, does the prototype that you're showing indicate, is this technically efficient? Is it working? And is this solution scalable? And so when it comes to say creating a model, they're like, okay, they have 100 data points. How can they get more? Are they going to get more? They're going to ask those questions. So you have to make sure that your solution is scalable, both in terms of model data as well as markets. So, for example, if you're starting in one university, where you can you spread other universities, or is this just a niche thing for one small market? Team capabilities, same thing. Technical sophistication, yeah, pretty similar to the last one, but does it function as you propose and say the use of AI and ML technologies? That's the same as the proposal. Just how you use them, use available data, and then interface design, plans, and consumability. So that's a new one, but it really goes into how seamless is the experience using your solution. You don't want it to be like a 10-step process to a very simple thing.
A lot of this criteria seems, I mean, I'm having a little trouble judging a project that relies on a lot of like GPT AI. How they would rank, like use of available data, technical sophistication. Like how would that work?
So for the technical sophistication with a tool that's leveraging ChatGPT or something like that, that is simply, are you effectively calling the APIs? Have you been able to integrate it with your tool? Are you able to make it work? So the technical sophistication still works. We're not looking, this isn't a measure of, did you train your own model and how complex was that model that you created? It's not about that. It's about, were you able to create a prototype that actually functions? Okay. As far as the use of available data, first of all, you'll notice that's only 5 points rather than 10 points that many of the others are, except for the interface. And that is simply a measure of, if you needed data, did you find them? Did you use them? So for yours, that may not be nearly as important. And the question is, did you leverage existing data sources in a meaningful way? Yeah, everything that you needed, you used. It's fine. It's not, oh, you're only using a 50 gigabyte data set and they're using a terabyte, they're better. It's not anything like that. Okay.
Yeah. And if you're concerned about if they think like, oh, you're just using ChatGPT, we're going to talk about how customers your problems are and things like that, and how well you're using it rather than
right.
Just stating things. Yeah. So guys, that's it. Here's the 2 QR codes for attendance and our socials.
One last thing I'll also mention. Pat just put up all the review criteria. That is the other big mistake that I have seen in documentation and videos, that they obviously did not get their materials together and then compare them to the review criteria. For instance, we haven't talked about team capabilities other than at the end there. I have had teams that have submitted and never mentioned anything about their teams in it. They get zeros in that section. And to be 100% honest with you, if you whiff any section, you're out. It's competitive enough that you're a point or two away from making it or not. So yeah.
Is that if you mention it in the video, or if you mention it in general video or documentation?
It can be one or the other. I have always liked the approach of showing a flash screen of the gallery of faces. You don't have to go into, and this person is this lead and this person is this skill set, and don't get into that. That's in the documentation. But again, personalize this. Show you. We had a team, I love this team, Lion Pad. They had a thing where they recorded a video of them running at each other and jumping up and high-fiving in the air and freeze framing while they're in the air. And that's how they showed off their team. it was entertaining, people laughed. That's a good thing if reviewers laugh in a good way. So, show your personality a little bit. And then reference them to the documentation for details.
Thank you. Yeah, any final questions, guys? Cool, that's it.